A lot of you guys have been asking us to take the new 2020 $1,800 MacBook Pro and combine it with an eGPU, and then compare that to the base 16-inch MacBook Pro by itself to see which setup is more powerful for things like video editing and other performance tasks. So we did just that, and we found some results that you probably aren't expecting. But before we get into those performance results, I want to first show you guys the enclosure and the graphics card that we chose for this build and why we recommend those parts. The Razer Core X for $300 has been the most reliable in our experience, so it's a great choice. And you also have the option of upgrading to the Chroma model, which features RGB lighting and extra ports for connecting things like a mouse and keyboard. As for the graphics card, we strongly recommend buying the 5700 XT for $380. It is by far the best choice, and we've proven that when we compared it to other popular cards. And not only that, but Apple has added a new W5700X graphics option for their 2019 Mac Pro workstation, which will be shipping very soon. The reason this matters is because it's essentially identical to the 5700 XT graphics card that we recommend, except for the VRAM difference. So this means that Apple is going to be releasing new drivers for both of these cards, so the 5700 XT is going to be getting faster over time. So with this eGPU, the total price of the 13-inch MacBook Pro eGPU setup becomes $2,480, which is actually more expensive than the base 16-inch MacBook Pro. But the benefit is that you get great portability for when you're on the go, and then a big boost in graphics power while plugged into the eGPU at home. Now, before we get into video gaming, 3D rendering, and video editing performance, you need to know the most important thing about using the eGPU setup. You absolutely must use it with an external display if you want to get the most power out of it. And on top of that, we actually noticed that plugging the display into certain outputs on the graphics card gave us better performance. So you'll have to experiment with this and test out the different outputs to see which one gives you the best performance. So just to give you guys an idea of the performance difference, the 13-inch MacBook Pro by itself scored 10,166 points in Geekbench 5's Metal Graphics test, which is decent for a 13-inch laptop. But with the eGPU setup plugged into an external monitor, that score went up to 31,122, tripling the graphics performance. However, this is actually a lower score than what this card is supposed to get, and we think it's because of a driver issue that should hopefully get fixed when Apple updates the drivers for the Mac Pro's W5700X graphics card. But luckily, we discovered a method to work around this driver issue by connecting two displays at once to the eGPU. And with that, we got a better score of over 53,000, and there's a chance that it could get even better with 3 displays. Now you're probably thinking, there's no way I'm gonna use 2 displays with my MacBook Pro, and the good news is that you don't have to. You can actually buy a couple of these cheap HDMI dummy adapters, which trick your eGPU into thinking that they're actual displays, and then you get those extra performance gains without having to buy expensive monitors. We'll leave some links down to those dummy adapters in the description. So without further ado, let's first get into video gaming performance, starting with the classic Unigine Heaven gaming benchmark on the Extreme preset. The MacBook Pro alone only got 13.5 FPS in this test, but with the eGPU, that score shot up to 70 FPS, completely blowing away the 16-inch MacBook Pro in terms of gaming performance. So then we played some Fortnite to see which option worked better using the recommended settings that you see right here, and we saw that the eGPU setup completely blew the 16-inch MacBook Pro away. So we then adjusted the settings to 1440p resolution, but turned off a lot of the extra graphics settings, and the 16-inch MacBook Pro barely improved, so you can see that the eGPU is by far the best choice for gaming. Next up, we tested Blender's quick graphics benchmark, and the eGPU setup wiped the floor with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, mostly because the 5700 XT graphics card has 8 GB of video memory. So for graphics rendering, the eGPU is definitely the better choice. And now let's get into video editing, starting with the graphics heavy BruceX Benchmark in Final Cut Pro 10. Here we can see that the eGPU setup is actually almost twice as fast as the base 16-inch Pro. and it made a huge difference compared to the 13-inch Pro by itself. And for our 20-second 4K stabilization test, the eGPU helped the 13-inch match up to the 16, so we can see that it's really helping for these graphics-heavy tests. However, when we start to move over to our exporting tests, like this 5-minute 4K H.264 clip, which is the codec that most YouTubers use, the 16-inch MacBook Pro finished quite a lot faster, even though the eGPU did help the 13-inch MacBook Pro finish almost twice as fast. Now, the reason the 16-inch is faster is that when you're exporting videos, the data has to go from the CPU to the eGPU for graphics processing and then back to the CPU. And all of that has to happen within a single cable, which has limited bandwidth. But with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the dedicated graphics chip is connected to the CPU by incredibly fast PCI Express lanes with less latency and much more bandwidth, so it finishes the export faster even though the graphics performance is lower. And because of that, we see very similar results in the Canon C200 Raw 60 FPS export test, with the 16-inch MacBook Pro winning once again. Now, in terms of timeline smoothness, the 16-inch wins again with close to the full 60 FPS of the clip, but for the 13-inch MacBook Pro, you don't get a very smooth experience, even with the eGPU helping it out a bit. So as we can see, for video editing within Final Cut Pro 10, the eGPU definitely helps out, but the 16-inch MacBook Pro is still the best choice, especially for exporting videos. Now, we also tested Blackmagic Resolve Studio, and we actually got some very different results. We ran the same 20-second 4K stabilization test, and we can see that our times got a bit slower all around, and that's because Final Cut Pro is the king of stabilization. But one interesting difference is that the eGPU was the winner by far, and that's because Resolve Studio is actually more optimized for eGPUs than Final Cut Pro currently is. And now, running that same 5-minute 4K export test, we can see that the speeds got a bit quicker, but the 16-inch MacBook Pro is still the clear winner because of those bandwidth limitations with the eGPU. Now, by far the biggest difference we saw with the eGPU was in the Blackmagic Raw test. Exporting this clip took over an hour on the 13-inch MacBook Pro by itself, but with the help of the eGPU, it took only 4 minutes and 25 seconds. But surprisingly, the 16-inch MacBook Pro still finished quicker. But the more important difference is the timeline smoothness. The 13-inch Pro can only play this back at 3 frames per second, which is unbearable if you're trying to edit video. But with the eGPU, it plays back at perfectly smooth 24 FPS, just like the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, before I get into my conclusion for this video, I do want to mention that an eGPU is going to do absolutely nothing for things like programming, photo editing, and using Logic Pro 10. So don't even think about wasting your money if you do those things on your MacBook. But from all of the tests that we just ran, we can conclude that if you play games, the eGPU is a must. And honestly, for gaming, you don't actually need the $1,800 13-inch model. The base $1,300 model will perform close to the same, and we'll show you guys that when we test it sometime next week. So if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and do that right now so you don't miss out. We also noticed that for 3D rendering, the eGPU was once again the better choice since it's so graphics heavy. But for video editing, we can conclude that the 16-inch MacBook Pro is by far the better choice since it's not only faster in most of the tests, but it's cheaper and you don't have to deal with everything that comes with the eGPU. However, if you're somebody who absolutely must have the portability of the 13-inch MacBook Pro, or if you already have a 13-inch, then investing about $680 into the eGPU setup is an excellent choice, and it'll make a big difference for video editing as well. So if this video helped you make a decision, we'll have links to each of the MacBooks and the eGPU parts down in the description below. So go ahead and tap the like button and click the circle above to see our 13-inch MacBook Pro eGPU video coming soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.